Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first ISE podcast webinar of 2021. And today we're going to be talking about Kickstarter. We haven't got our cameras on this time around. We normally do. Paul, who's joining us from the DWP, has had to do it on his phone, and also Danny's had a problem with his webcam. So I thought, rather than just staring at my ugly mug all the way through, we'll have cameras off for this one. But don't let that stop it being an interactive session. And we'd really like your questions sent through. The platform we're using, GoToWebinar, you can put your questions on there. I'll pass those through to Danny and Paul as we go through. We'll record the webinar, as we do with all of our webinars, and that will you'll get a link through to that probably later on today. So if you want to go back and revisit the website, you can do. But also, please share the content around your organisation. You know, we're very keen that the sessions we put on for our members get used very much across their organisation. And of course, something as important as Kickstart, I think it's really important that we do get the word spread out about the programme and how beneficial it is. So let's crack on. So I've got we're one person less than we expected, but I think Paul will probably explain that when I come around to him. But let's do introductions first. So my name's Steve Isherwood, Chief Executive of the ISE, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Danny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Danny Matthews, Apprenticeship and Community Recruitment Lead at the Co-op.
Great, thanks, Danny. And Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, good afternoon everybody. My name's Paul Scott and I work in the Department of Work and Pensions, and I'm on loan from my normal day job, which is like a Senior National Account Manager, like a DWP recruitment consultant. I'm working on loan to the Kickstart programme.
Fantastic, thanks, Paul. And you were supposed to be joined by your colleague Sean today. That was a plan. We had a briefing call last week, didn't we? But
yeah, that was the plan. Unfortunately, Sean has not been able to join us because he's been struck down with COVID, so he's not at all well today. So I'm afraid you've just got me, but I will do my best to answer any questions that come up today.
Fantastic, and give Sean our best wishes. Okay, as a speedy recovery. Cool. Well, it's actually quite it feels quite apt chairing this week because we've just had our first two Kickstart placements approved at the ISE, so we're gonna get a couple of Kickstarts joining us hopefully in the very near future. So we're already converts to the call, so hopefully by the end of this call we'll have a few more converts to the program. So Danny, do you want to just kick us off and just give us a little bit of an overview of why Kickstart's important to the co-op, why you've got involved and what you want to get out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose I'll probably start off with kind of what we're looking to do as part of the program. So as a cooperative, most of you I think should know who the co-op are, but for those who don't, largest cooperative in the world, around about 2,500 food stores, a range of funeral homes, logistics depots, and a growing league of businesses as well. And across those organisational areas, we're looking to offer 150 Kickstart opportunities throughout the course of 2021, mainly coming in between Q1 and Q3. The roles are really varied across the business, and we've made a commitment to offer at least 50% of those Kickstart colleagues, participants, a permanent, meaningful role with ourselves beyond their 6-month programme, and paid at the rate for the role as any other colleague would as well. And naturally, and I'm sure we'll cover this today as well, we'll be providing a wraparound support from an employability skills and a kind of career development point of view. So that's what we're doing at the co-op. In terms of the why, there's a couple of reasons really. Community resourcing is an area that I look after for the retailer, and that is essentially how we support individuals from furthest away from the workplace and into employment. And it's pretty obvious and quite fair to say that this program, this initiative is deep rooted in that agenda as well, all about supporting young people into meaningful work and giving young people a really great experience of the workplace and developing those kind of workplace skills and employability skills to help them build their career moving forward. From an organisation point of view, it's part of our talent strategy to increase how many young people we have in our business, and particularly focused around communities of need. So I suppose this is one slight difference as to how we're approaching the Kickstart program. Is whilst we've got stores spread throughout the UK, those 150 opportunities will be focused only in communities of highest need. And we've used quite a lot of data, cooperative community wellbeing index, which is free to everyone to use, which kind of shows how healthy or deprived a community might be. So we've used a lot of data to influence where our opportunities are, so we can have the biggest impact on young people who need it the most. And a wraparound of all of that around why is it's a big part of our cooperating for a fairer world agenda. And within that is a huge focus on how we're supporting young people, particularly as a result of the impact that we've seen on young people from the coronavirus pandemic, how we're supporting them to either change direction or access a meaningful career, wherever that might be that with the co-op or be that with another organisation.
And are there any particular bits of your business where you think this is relevant for, Danny, or is it pretty much across the board?
I think it's really across the board. I mean, it'd be fair to say that a lot of people would expect the majority of our opportunities to be within our food estate, which is absolutely the case. Around about 80 of those 150 will be in our food stores. But we've got a real range of roles, from kind of legal assistants in our legal services business, customer advisors and colleagues within our head office in Manchester, funeral service crew, coffin manufacturers up in Glasgow. So a real range of colleagues, and I think that's probably testament to how passionate our business is around supporting young people into careers, and probably some careers that aren't usually very attractive to young people as well.
Yeah, but it gives them that exposure to it. Got it. Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
So over to yourself, Paul. Do you want to just give us a bit of an insight into actually how the programme works from a DWP perspective?
Yeah, of course.
And sort of, I guess, background to what it's come about and what it's trying to achieve as well, from because it is it's a key part of the government's drive, isn't it, to help actually relieve pressures on unemployment, as a result of this crisis.
Absolutely, and hello again, everybody, wherever you are across the country. I'm coming to you from a very rainy Flitwick in Bedfordshire. I do have to just let you know that I've got homeschooling going on, so hopefully if you hear any background noise, you'll understand the reason for it. So, yes, just as thank you for that introduction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you some information about Kickstart. What I don't want to do is just compound you with loads and loads and loads of guidance. So I'm going to pick out some of the highlights of the program and just take you through it. And then, of course, if you've got questions, I think that would be a much healthier way of having that discussion, that you can ask the questions that you may have about it, and I can take those questions on towards the end. So Kickstart, I've been in the department over 20 years, and without any doubt, this is one of the largest, the most aspirational programs I've seen in all of my career that I've had within DWP. The Kickstart scheme is going to provide jobs for universal credit claimants aged 16 to 24 who are deemed at risk of long-term unemployment. It's going to provide jobs of 25 hours a week for 6 months. The government will fund the cost of those 25 hours at the national minimum wage plus any national insurance contributions, and also employers' minimum automatic enrolment contributions. And that's for the full 6 month duration of that person that's with you. And the employer can choose to pay that individual more if they wish to, but that's completely voluntary, and that would be at the employer's cost to top up those hours. What we want to do is we want to make sure that young people get an opportunity to build their work experience, gain valuable employability skills, and if it's right for them and it's right for the employer, move into sustained employment. And what that will do is it will give that young person a quality experience of the world of work, so that when they leave or stay, they're in a far better position than they were at the start. Now, I mentioned the eligibility. The young people aged 16 to 24, they must be unemployed, they must have nil earnings, they must be in receipt of universal credit, and they can only be referred by the job centre staff, work coaches, who will refer them in to the employers if they deem them suitable for your posts. Now, in terms of the actual individuals that come to you, the work coaches would work with them. They would check their eligibility. They would check all of their benefits. So they come to you, in a really good position, focused on the role. It's voluntary. There's no enforcement of making them go for interviews. They'll be coming for any roles with you because they're genuinely interested in your roles and they want to work with you. When the young people come to you as the employer, it's really, really important that we would ask you to look at some key things with them. And those key things would be, firstly, their employability. So this is about making sure that that young person comes in and they get developed, that they learn on the job. If there's a qualification they can achieve, they can get a qualification. They get mentored and they get treated as a valuable part of the team. These roles have to be additional to existing business. So they cannot be part of your normal headcount role of work. So one of the ways in which I describe this as an example would be if you was a restaurant chain owner and you had 10 restaurants in Hertfordshire, and each of those 10 restaurants normally works with a headcount of staff of 30. If you're running at 25, you wouldn't be looking to get 5 Kickstarters to make your resource up to 30. You'd be resourcing it at 30, and the Kickstart people would be above and beyond. These roles are new jobs because there's not a guarantee of a permanent role at the end of it. So these are new roles that come to you for 6 months. The government is paying that grant into you so they can join you. Now, I mentioned the employability. What will also come with that person will be a payment of, it actually works out as £1,860 per person. Now, that would be, if you are a gateway organisation, you would get £300 for the administration of the individual. But if you are a pure employer, you would get £1,500. I can take those on some of the questions, but what that's about, it's about providing a grant payment for the young person to be developed, so the employer's got that money, so they can use that money to buy in training, to support them, to buy uniform, to actually make sure that that person's embedded into the workplace with you. The salary is paid a month in arrears, so anybody that you take somebody on who works with you, they would work with you for the first month, and we would draw down real-time information that we share with HMRC, and the salary, that 25 hours, would be reimbursed a month in arrears. So that's how the financial side of it would work. In terms of taking people on, it's still your choice. You could have 3 vacancies available and interview 10 people and only like 2 of them. You only need to take on the 2 that are most suitable for you. When you are working with these young people, I mentioned there's some key areas, and employability is absolutely one of them. The other area is around looking at their development, and if they are, you may well find that using this program that you're going to find some untapped talent. Some of these individuals will be ones that are deemed by the work coach to be furthest away from the labour market. And this will be the opportunity for them to come in, to impress, to learn, to work with you. So it may well be a case that you can find some untapped talent that you might not have considered before that can come in and work with you within your organisation. And any organisation, and Co-op have signed up to this, any organisation that is going to do this is really doing a fantastic thing for society. We know that young people, there's large volumes of young people unemployed. This Kickstart program does literally what it says on the tin. It kickstarts that opportunity for them. It builds their confidence. It helps them recover from this COVID situation in employment. It gives them experience. It gives them that opportunity in the workplace. And it can create something very, very special for them. So any organisation that is bidded for this and is committed to this should be commended for their approach in doing this, because it could quite literally change young people's lives and give them confidence, a career, and even if they don't stay with you, it could give them an opportunity to be signposted to other roles with other organisations. So it's a really excellent program. It really will make a difference to young people, and I think you'll get as much out of the young people as you put into it. So in terms of mentoring them and making sure that your managers, that your staff are briefed, that they're coming in, they're not quite part of the team, they're an additional part of the team. They can learn a range of roles within your organisation, and they can move forward towards a better future. So in a nutshell, that is what Kickstart is. So hopefully that's as clear as I can make it. I thought it'd be much better just giving you those highlights rather than reading you the guidance. But of course, I can give you all the links to the guidance if you'd like to go away and read it all. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great, Paul. And I think we've got those on our website already, but we'll definitely send them around as a follow-up to this as well. And then we did a webinar just before Christmas actually that Danny also took part in, and we had Bauer Media on it, and they were actually very enthusiastic about the Kickstart people they'd already had actually in their organisation, because they did it as that, exactly as you said, for that initially for that piece just to give back to society, but have had some really good people who've had a great experience who they're actually hiring full time or plan to. So I think that's a practical example of where actually the behind the rhetoric actually is the truth of this. And am I right in thinking that actually a variation of Kickstart was around in the financial crash, and actually that's where a lot of the history of this is, and it's that again in the financial crash was seen to actually have worked. So it is kind of tried and tested actually, a program like this. It is known to work. It's not 100% sort of blank sheet of paper.
Well, any program, any initiative that is developed is quite often based on previous initiatives that of similarity that have been successful, and we know that this type of approach will be successful. We know that we've got the network of young people. We know we've got the work coaches in the offices that have caseloads of young people, and they're talking to them on a regular basis, and they can identify them. And we know that we've now got the mechanisms and the national relationships with employers like yourselves to refer them into. And we do know from analysis and working groups and talking to some of the big youth unemployment organisations and youth charities that an initiative of this type, if taken on and adapted well to by companies, will make that difference. So yeah, it's based on previous ideas, but it's kind of encapsulated into this huge program where we're looking to get hundreds of thousands of young people into work. It's going to run at the moment, and I always say when I'm on these calls that guidance can change, because I know that guidance is reviewed all of the time. But at the moment, it's due to run until June 2022. So any young people that join you, you can take them on up until that date within your grant agreements. But there's always the possibility that that programs can change in their scope and in the length that they run. But that's not for me as a decision maker. That would be for somebody much more senior than me.
Got it. And I remember you telling me when we had a briefing call on this that you basically your department found out about it as it was being announced, and so the amount of work that you had to put in to make this a reality is quite phenomenal, and it's something that I don't think employers should underestimate. Really, these things don't just magic out of thin air, do they?
No, I'm glad you said that. No, it's a massive program, and there's been a massive amount of work done by DWP at pace. When you set up a program on this scale, you've got to have payment mechanisms in place. You've got to have all the communications in place. There's got to be a way of assessing the applications from employers and other organisations to make sure that the bids are sound and that they deliver what we're asking. We assess them on the grounds of, are they got additional roles? Are they going to offer the right employability for young people? We also, of course, run cabinet office spotlight checks to make sure that any organisation that will be accessing public money pass our fiscal checks to make sure that they can look after the individuals, and there won't be any further problems further down the line. So all of those checks have to be done. So all of that process has to be put in place. And then, of course, we have our legals teams looking at the approval documents to make sure that all of the employers know exactly what their responsibilities are in return for taking on that public money and creating these opportunities. So there's been a massive amount of work done by some very talented people right across DWP in a short space of time. It may be that sometimes pulling a program like this together could take several months, whereas this has been pulled together in several weeks. It's been hugely popular. We've had lots of applications, lots to assess, but it's brilliant news that yours has been agreed, that you've had your notification through.
Yeah, and I have to say, actually, the application was pretty process light. I mean, we're all aware sometimes that actually, sort of filling out government-led forms, etc., can be a little bit laborious. But actually, on this, I was really impressed about the speed we were able to do it, and actually, it isn't overly onerous. That's very much my experience of it. I guess that was built into the program as well to make it, not in a way that doesn't have any depth, but actually, a good process for employers to engage with that isn't too onerous.
No, I think you're right. And I mean, I've had conversations with lots of small, medium and national companies across all sectors, from facilities management to retail to hospitality to finance. And some of those employers have got big bidding teams. And when I sat down with them on calls and went through the bidding process, they said exactly the same thing, that they were impressed by the fact that the bidding process is very, very straightforward. It links into the guidance. There is a website, gov.uk Kickstart, and if you go on there, there's a bidding form to fill in, where you just put in all of your details. There's guidance now that we didn't have right at the start, because obviously the program has evolved as it's moved on, which actually tells you what a good bid looks like and gives you hints and tips of how to write it. And then you just basically fill in the stencil online and click submit. It's very, very easy to put in a bid.
Cool. I've got a number of questions coming through already, and I'm going to dive into those in a sec. There was just one thing I was going to ask before we did that. And could you just explain a little bit more about this difference between either using a gateway provider or doing it yourselves, and maybe a bit of what employers should think about those alternatives? I mean, for us, it was there's no way we could. We're only a small team, so absolutely would quadruple our size. But what's your employers? Because some large employers are still using gateways, aren't they?
Of course, yeah. So I'm giving you these answers now today, and I am conscious of the fact that this call will be recorded. And as I just said, guidance can and will change as the program is reviewed and refined. So the answer is correct as of right now. So for an employer, any employer can obviously show an interest in applying for a gateway. Applying to be a Kickstart provider. So what would happen is, for an employer, they would go online, they'd have a look at the process and make the bid. Now, as it stands at the moment, we would ask an employer that they must have 30 opportunities in order to submit a bid. And when an employer submits that bid, they must have 30 opportunities within their organisation to offer. Now, those 30 opportunities are not a set 30 opportunities. That can be 30 opportunities for the lifetime of the programme. So if somebody leaves and your numbers drop to 25, you can actually replace them to bring it back up to 30. But as it stands today, the minimum that an employer has to have in terms of opportunities is 30. But I would like to say that I do know that piece of guidance is currently under review. So I can't tell you what might happen to it, but it may change. Now, if it changes, it will change to make it easier for employers to apply. For a gateway organisation is there to support those companies who haven't got the 30 jobs. So maybe you might have some small companies or small branches that have only got 4 or 5 opportunities. So that at the moment, they can't bid in their own right because they haven't got the 30 opportunities. What they can do, though, is join a gateway organisation who will submit the bid on their behalf. So in some parts of the country, we've had chambers of commerce that have spoken to employers in their local community, and they've submitted a bid on behalf of maybe 30, 40 companies, and they've pulled all of their vacancies together. Now, when an employer applies for Kickstart, they'll get the salary in arrears. They will also get the £1,500 Kickstart grant. A gateway will get £300 per individual that they work with on behalf of the employers, and the £1,500 grant for the young person goes to the gateway. So the gateway controls the finances and sends all of that money out to the employers. So I know of one particular large employer, a very established employer, that didn't really want to be bothered with any of the mechanisms of having to submit the bid. So what they did is they identified a gateway organisation and they got them to do it all for them. And that gateway organisation set it all up so they can just concentrate on recruiting the young people. Now, the gateway organisations as well, their role is to look after all of the compliance, and the record keeping. So in effect, if you are a retail store in Milton Keynes and you've got 10 roles and you go to Milton Keynes Chamber of Commerce and ask them to, and knowing that they're a gateway provider, they would put the bid in for you, and then the monies would come through for the grants. The gateway provider will share those monies with you for the grant, and also they would actually handle the salaries that would come through into their bank account and send them on to those employers in arrears. So that's how it stands at the moment. But I have to state that I do know that the whole process of gateways is currently under review at the most senior level within DWP. And again, it's about looking to make the process much easier for people to access.
That's,
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does, Paul. Thanks. That's
Brilliant.
Very good to know. Just a bit of insight, actually. So the gateway we're using, they're keeping 2/3 of the money because they're also providing the employability training and support. Because again, being such a small team and being quite spread out remotely, we just struggle to do it properly. So, so they will.
Well, I'm glad you've mentioned that.
Money, but different providers have different relationships. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you've mentioned that instead of me. Yeah, the DWP will not get involved in those discussions between the employers and the gateways as to what happens with that £1,500. So a gateway could decide to give all of the £1,500 to the employers in their gateways, or they could offer to provide some of that employability training on behalf of those employers, because some employers just don't want to get involved in that, and then charge from that £1,500, charge an amount for that employability training. So it might be, for example, that you might have a gateway that offers a 2.5-week learning and development course to cover off the employability part of the role and charges £500, so the employer gets £1,000. But that is a negotiation between the gateway and the employers, and it's not something that we will involve ourselves in.
Got it. Let's start getting stuck into some of these questions here. Some of these we sort of covered a little bit, but people are asking. But the first question I've got up from Alison here is about actually, I guess it's the process of advertising the jobs. So do they have to go through Job Centre Pluses, or can employers advertise the jobs themselves and take applications themselves? So is there just a bit more detail on how that actual process works?
Of course. Okay, so once an employer has applied and the bid's been approved, a grant letter will come out saying we are happy to tell you that your vacancies have been agreed, and what would then happen is you would be invited to post your vacancies onto our universal credit build. Now, the reason that we do that is so that the work coaches sitting in the local offices who've got those caseloads instantly can see your opportunities ping straight into them, so that they can see the opportunities, they can check their caseloads, and they can check the they can check the eligibility of the young people. Right, sorry, so many of these calls, my voice is there. They can check the eligibility of the young people that they're referring to you. And what happens is the universal credit build, it pulls through, it links into the evidence of the young person starting as well. Now, in terms of that, the work coach is the only person that can refer the person to you. And one of the reasons for this is that we want to avoid situations where somebody applies for a role, starts, and then we find out further down the line that actually they weren't eligible. We want to avoid scenarios where maybe somebody's earning is earning for 15 hours a week and is in receipt of universal credit. But of course, it has to be nil earnings. So we want to avoid situations where people are told they have to be removed from the programme because they're not eligible further down the line. So what a lot of companies have done, including the likes of Tesco's and Pets at Home, is they have spoken about the roles on their websites or in their communications, but they've been very, very clear in their messaging to say that if you're interested in these roles, you need to contact your local work coach, who will check your eligibility and refer you to us. And you as an organisation determine what goes in that job description. And then we have a central vacancy team, and they will create that job description on your behalf and upload it onto that universal credit build, so it goes right through to the work coaches. It's very different to how you would normally work with Job Centre Plus potentially, and how you might work with job boards. but it is the quickest and most efficient method of getting your roles into the work coaches and to the eligible candidate. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer.
No, that was good. And actually, a related question that's come from Darren, because you mentioned actually, sort of who it's applicable for, and Darren's asking a bit around this phrase, this at risk of long-term unemployment. And my understanding when the program first started, somebody had to have been out of work, claiming universal credit for 6 months, but that's not the case, is it? So is there a bit of clarity around what the definition of somebody who is eligible?
No,
it's applicable to grads as well as non-grads.
No, I think some of this might have come out very, very early on, because I think Tesco's did advertise some posts very, very early on and stipulated the 6-month criteria. The difference being that Tesco's are financing their own opportunities, so it's a variant on Kickstart, and that maybe created some confusion with some retail companies. But it is actually, because that's what they've determined to do themselves, but it is actually anybody in receipt of universal credit. They don't need to be 6 months unemployed. Now, when I said about a work coach's definition of that person being furthest away from the labour market, if somebody's just signed on to universal credit and they've got a track record of 3 consecutive jobs, and they've got other jobs outstanding that they're going to, and then Kickstart's an additional one, it might be that work coach decides that actually this person is not at risk of long-term unemployment. I think they're going to get one of these roles they're going for, and they would make that decision as to who to refer to you. They also want to make sure that when they refer someone to you, that they are keen, that they're suitable for the role, so that you're not sent anybody that is feeling like they've been forced to come and see you. So the work coach's definition of people furthest away from the labour market, of course, can change, because in certain parts of the country you could be a graduate and you could still be at risk of long-term unemployment, depending on the community in which you live and the opportunities that exist within that community. So it's a judgment call from the work coach, but we're not looking to stop people from applying. We're looking to encourage people to apply.
Got it. And a question here as well from Dan, which is a little more information in terms of the employability support piece. And I guess, what happens if somebody's not able to be kept on after that 6-month period? Does the placement just end and then they then go back into, I guess, the system for more long-term support?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good one, because it's a really good question, Darren. So yeah, I mean, the idea would be that if they work with you and stay with you for 6 months, but at the end of that program, you'd say to yourselves, well, actually, look, you're not really suitable for us. We would hope that person, once they've had that 6 months with you, and I've done loads of sector-based work academies in the past with, in my roles with working with Casual Dining Group in Leeds and Sheffield and Coventry, and people who work in any setting are certainly more employable after 6 months in other places. And I've been a hospitality specialist in recruitment for some while, and I've seen quite a few people do hospitality academies and then go off to a completely different sector, quite often retail actually, because they realise that they would prefer to do that than hospitality. So actually that person, they will go back to the work coach, and the work coach will work with them. They'll look to see what they've achieved and where they're at and where they were from the start of the program. So they won't be discarded. It's a win-win for companies. You're not going to be able to take on everybody, but you will develop people, and they will be stronger and in a much better place than where they were at the start of the program. In terms of, I'm just going to add something onto this, because I don't know if that was part of the question. If that person then leaves, and say, for example, you have 10 posts, that 10 posts is for the entire lifetime of the program. So if, after 5 months you had 10, but you've only now got 7, you can re-recruit another 3, and you would still get the £1,500 grant then comes back into play again, because that money is aimed at supporting the young person. So you can actually go up to your grant level. And in actual fact, we would let you go slightly over as well. If it was 2 or 3 over that 10, we wouldn't go mad about that. If it was if you got an agreement for 10 and you took 20, then yeah, we would have issue with that. But if it's slightly over, we would allow that as well.
Got it. So because this was one of the questions, actually, you preempted one of the ones I was going to ask. So
Oh.
if somebody leaves as part of the program, or maybe you hire them permanently and you take them off the program and give them a full-time job, you can then just refill that position as part of the. You don't have to go through the whole process to reapply for another place again.
Well, what a great question. What a great positive question. Yeah, I mean, fantastic. You know, that is what it's all about. It's a kickstarting these young people. I have no doubt whatsoever that you will identify some people, and you know, your managers will be jumping up and down thinking, you know, this person's great. I really need to take them on. And you wouldn't have got them under any. It's a great situation really, because you can test these people out to see what they're like, and see what their commitment is, and offer them a permanent post. And then in offering them a permanent post, you're then creating another opening for another Kickstart person. So it's a completely win-win scenario, that. So yes, absolutely.
A couple more questions on the application process. So do employers need to know exactly what the roles will be before they put an application in for a place? And then what is the sort of the timeline? How quickly should employers expect to hear back?
Okay. The answer to the first part of that is yes. We would like to know what the roles are. It's very, very hard to determine whether the roles are additional or not without knowing what they are. So, for example, if you were a restaurant chain and you're currently advertising for crew members and you put in a Kickstart bid for crew members, then DWP would say, hang on a minute, how can these jobs be additional if you're already looking for crew members and then you want Kickstart crew members? How are they additional? So a lot of companies have looked at that additionality question and they've sat down and they've said, well, look, what we'll do is we'll make these roles Kickstart team members or Kickstart crew members. We'll build in additionality into the roles and the training. We'll make them very different to the normal crew members. So in that respect, we do need to know the details of what the roles are, and there's quite a lot of guidance on the government website which will help you define that. But if people had questions, I'm sure that we would be able to support with some questions and some techniques on how to do that. So in terms of the second part of the question, at the very start of this program, I will be completely honest with you, we were inundated with applications. And to begin with, we did have a head of work which slowed down our ability to be able to process them quickly. However, we put an immense amount of time and energy into these, and the aim now is to get into a business as usual position where we would be able to turn around applications within 4 weeks.
And I can support that. Our application, it was less than 4 weeks. We put it in the week before Christmas, and this is over the course of the Christmas period as well, which I imagine some people were taking some time off. Yeah, we had it back in 2 weeks, I think it was. So.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. And I think the thing is as well, if you take the time to actually word the applications as well as you can, that helps the assessors to be able to pass them through. And because this program is public money, we have to justify giving public money out to organisations. So we have to make sure that it meets the criteria. So, that unfortunately there have been some companies that haven't met the criteria and their bids have failed. But what we would do, especially the fact that, as an organisation, you've got great links in co-op with the Job Centre Plus National Employer Partnership team. What we would do is we'd come back to you and say, look, there's some bits missing on this. We'll help you in trying to get the content up to scratch to get your bid through. So, we wouldn't be looking to fail your bids. We would be looking to work with you to get your bid through.
Initially, the gateway we're working with, they turned down a couple of people who wanted to work with them on the basis of they didn't think the jobs were really development opportunities. It was just just a way of getting some labour. And so I think that's more than understandable. Another question, actually, we talked about the application process, etc. But Andrew's asked a question about can startup businesses apply to the program? Does a business have to have a certain amount of track record of trading? Are there any constraints around that?
Oh yeah, well, at the moment with the guidance, a company does need to be trading for in excess of a year and have a company's house reference number. There are gateways out there that will support sole traders and start-up organisations that might not necessarily have PAYE. And one of those gateway organisations does include Adecco Working Ventures. But what will happen is that different gateways would have to look at whether or not they are prepared to take on those PAYE obligations for those small start-up businesses. The other thing that we would look at is, I was talking to somebody yesterday actually, is that when you've got somebody maybe that only employs 2 people, we're not going to, at the moment with our guidance, we're not going to allow somebody who employs 2 to then go out and bid for 30, because what that was actually in effect doing is increasing the size of that business and expanding that business. It's not a Kickstart opportunity. But what those organisations can do is they can bid from within a gateway to go for larger numbers within the gateway, because the gateway then takes on the obligation for those individual companies. But as I said at the start of this call, all of that guidance is currently under review and can change. But there are ways and means for most organisations to be able to participate.
That's great. So is that, I think one of the things that I picked up with this programme is that actually there's also some, I think, a role for universities and colleges and schools to play here, those that are keeping in touch with their alumni, people who recently sort of left, graduated, and that's to make sure that actually students are aware of this programme and knowing that they can, you know, if they're struggling to find work, it is a route that they can use. So it's not just about the employers, it's about those who might use it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have had some successful bids come in from groups of universities and schools and colleges who have identified Kickstart roles, additional roles as well, within their organisation. So they have bid. And anything, I think, that gives that person that development. You know, just because you're a student, you might be in a university, you're in between college, or maybe in a gap year. You know, you still could find themselves in a position of potentially long-term unemployment. So, yeah, it's not a restrictive program. It's an encouraging program.
Right. A question here that I think you have mostly covered actually, which is about, you know, how are those roles determined in terms of who's put forward to an organisation. But an organisation does have full choice about who joins, and I wondered also if there's what the process is. You know, you'd hope that everybody who gets a placement, it'll work out and they'll have a good 6 months experience, but there will no doubt be the odd exception where somebody just isn't right for the organisation. An organisation can let go of somebody if it's not working out, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. For all intents and purposes, you're going to be treating the young people who work with you the same as you would as your existing teams in terms of standards of behaviour and the way in which they're managed. And on the flip side of that, if you're treating them the same as everybody else in terms of standards of behaviour, we want you to treat them exactly the same in terms of reward and recognition and how you recognise them within your organisations.
Got it. I've had a question here from Andrew. Let me see if I'll read it out exactly actually so I can get it right. So it's, okay. Can a sole trader take placements on their own PAYE if they've got it in place, although still applied through a gateway?
The sole traders issue is one of the items that is currently under review. So it may change from after today, because I know that there are meetings taking place to consider sole traders. So sole traders at the moment cannot bid in their own right. They would need to do it from within a gateway. But we do look at sole traders at the moment as a key contributor to Kickstart. We want them to be involved, but at the moment, as it stands, they would need to bid from within a gateway.
Got it. And then a question again. I think we've covered most of this. It's around actually businesses demonstrating, you know, that Kickstarters are additional to their headcount. And I very much get the example used of a restaurant. Obviously, when we did our applications, we were able to talk about the fact that we didn't have these roles in the past. You know, they're not roles, you know, that we had to let go as part of the crisis. And actually, we did say, you know, unless situation changes, it might be unlikely that we would increase these roles. So, is there any more guidance just on how employers can demonstrate that, or what they might get picked up on about these roles being, you know, additional headcount? Because I guess some of the people listening to this webinar are also running programs that are still recruiting, because a lot of employers are recruiting, you know, sort of hard and fast, as it were. So, I guess when you're doing recruitment anyway, you've also got to show that these are extra.
Yeah, I think when anybody puts a bid in, we start from there looking at the statement where organisations start off by saying these roles would not have existed without Kickstart. If we have a company contacting us today saying they urgently need their Kickstart jobs approved because they've got vacancies they need to fill tomorrow, then my answer to that would be, well, they're clearly not additional roles then, because that's obviously part of your key business that you're looking to recruit if they're urgent for tomorrow. These additional roles should be additional. There should be an added bonus and an added opportunity to develop the individuals. And I think it's articulating that in the wording. And I think it's about saying that, these roles, they wouldn't have existed without Kickstart. They're additional roles to our normal business. The young people will be involved in carrying out a number of roles within the business. They'll be given developmental opportunities within the roles. They'll have a mentor to look after them. All the managers will be made aware that the young people are additional to our normal resource, that they are going to develop themselves within the program. So there'll be an element of learning. Some employers are taking time out for people to do their learning within that 25 hours. It might be that they do an hour each day in learning. It's just about explaining why those roles are additional to normal business and how they are above and beyond what you would normally have. So it's just demonstrating that and making those statements. And there is a lot of guidance on how to word it in Kickstart guidance, and also we have Sean and myself would be able to share with you, Danny and Stephen, some questions that I sometimes go out to companies with who are struggling with the whole additionality question. So I can send out some questions to you, which are pointed questions, which kind of like give you a bit of a steer for the content that you need to put under those questions, which would cover that.
Brilliant. That'd be most helpful. Paul,
Okay.
I'll give you a vocal cords a bit of a rest. I'm conscious that it's supposed to be you and Sean do that. Thank you very much for taking it all on yourself. Danny, can I just sort of come back to you, having listened to all that and also the questions that have come through? Is there anything that strikes you from the employer perspective, sort of as somebody who's very much involved in going through this process? Any advice you would give to other employers that are looking at Kickstarter and things that you think you would have loved to have known having started out on this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first point to make, and I know, Paul, you've referenced it throughout, is how much easier the process seems to have been or been changed to since the announcement was obviously made in July and applications opened in September. Because I remember looking at the first kind of version of the application form and the bid and thinking I'd probably need a whole bid team to write what's required, but then I obviously went to write the formal bid for the co-op before Christmas, and in going through that process, it's far easier, and there's so much guidance in there, which is really helpful. So I think the first thing for me would be not to be put off by the bid process. There's a few things I think for me as well around really trying to making sure that you get under the skin of the details. So on the website, the gov.uk website, there's already the grant agreement in there, not the letter, but the wider agreement, which has got a lot of detail in there as terms of what Paul and the DWP would be expecting of an employer who's and also a gateway organisation as well. And there's quite a lot of helpful detail in there around the employability skills expectations, the light touch audit kind of recording expectations as well, and I'd say light touch is definitely the right way to look at it. You definitely don't need any kind of internal auditor within your organisations to put it on their plan for this year. It's very light in terms of expectations. I think that the bit for me which is quite in the detail, and I'm conscious of not moving too much in the detail. I'm also really conscious of time. Is around the recruitment element, because I think it's quite easy for us to get a little bit confused at the beginning of the process to how that actually works. So I suppose just to go into a little bit more detail on top of what Paul has shared. So once your bid is approved, you'll be sent it's essentially an Excel spreadsheet. And within that, you need to complete the relevant details for the roles that you've got, criteria of entry. So if that's, somebody needs a driving license, or they need to be over the age of 18 for health and safety reasons, or whatever that might be, you'll need to fill in that document. And in there as well, there's an opportunity for you to stipulate when those opportunities will go live, for want of a better phrase. Because naturally, obviously, a lot of organisations, including ourselves, we're staggering our intakes throughout the year for operational reasons. And in that spreadsheet that you'll return to the DWP, which then is used to upload to the relevant systems for job coaches to access and understand the opportunities. In there, there's an opportunity for you to describe how a referral effectively, or an application from a young person can be made. So a couple of things on that. I think important to remember that whichever email address you put on your bid will be the email address, to my knowledge, will be the email address that referrals or notifications of referrals will come through to. If you're careful enough, you can dictate or have a conversation with the DWP around how many referrals you get. Obviously mindful that I think it was Tesco that had 25,000 referrals for their 1,000 opportunities in the space of a couple of weeks. So being mindful of the resource implications there is quite key. And once your job, for want of a better phrase, is live with the DWP, the job coaches will then you'll receive a notification into your inbox as a registered email to say that John Smith has been referred. But critically, and the important thing to call out here, is that email from the DWP and the job centre is not that candidate's application. That's where your direction and detail around how an individual applies, which is provided through said spreadsheet, is really key as such. And that was the bit that I was a little bit at the beginning of this journey, and a few colleagues in the recruitment team were a little bit confused. How does all of that work? And I suppose we're probably going to take a bit of a hybrid approach ourselves. Some of our roles will be managing that centrally from a resourcing perspective. And inviting candidates to almost sign up, register, apply through a link which is embedded within our system, so we can process accordingly. For some of our roles, we'll be looking to coordinate between our operational colleagues, so store managers and funeral directors, and we'll look to partner them up with the relevant job centre. So it takes that central element out of the recruitment process, direct to interview, and then we're then notified centrally of that recruitment need, and obviously from there on in upload them to our systems, and then they go into our normal payroll system. So I'm mindful that's quite a lot of detail, but I am also conscious that was the one piece I was really confused about at the beginning of the process, and we've managed to get there now. So just wanted to share that. Really, that's it from me.
And I was just going to add to that. Sorry. I'm sorry. I was just going to add to that that of course you've got the chain of communications with DWP. You've got a senior national account manager. You've got myself and Sean working within the project as well. So any concerns or support you need, just channel it back via us, and we'll support you. And it's a pretty straightforward process once you have a go at it. And anything that you're confused about, we'll support.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great, yeah. And don't apologise for the detail, Danny. From my experience of doing these, actually, a lot of it is the detail that people want. And actually, that's the stage we're about to go to next. I was listening very intently because that's what I need to do now. That's been initially been approved. Listen, guys, that's really good. We're pretty much on the hour, so we've had a lot of good questions come through. You've covered an awful lot of ground, so I really appreciate you, and I see a couple of comments coming through on the questions box saying thank you for the insight. So I know our audience have found it useful as well. So thanks very much from me and from the rest of the ISE membership. Really appreciate it. And Paul, if you can pass on our best wishes to Sean, hopefully he has a speedy recovery. We did do, I've alluded it to a couple of times, we did do a webinar just before Christmas. So if you want to go onto our Insights platform, and we talked more about the gateway route there, because we had a gateway provider on that platform with the ISE members. So so there is more detail out there. We're also going to be publishing blogs, etc. on this. So we will definitely keep coming back to this, because at the start, I think this is a really important initiative that we should get behind, because we really don't want, you know, a generation of young people sort of scarred by this pandemic when it comes to their career. So and as I said, we recorded this. You will get a link a bit later today with a recording of this. Please do share that, and also feel free to go back and revisit this, and if there's anything that you want to catch up on. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for your engagement. We'll have more webinars coming on as the year progresses. This was the first one of 2021. We've already got about number 4 or 5 in the pipeline. So on all topics related to students' employment, etc. We'll be bringing more to you as the year progresses. But that's all for now. Thank you very much for attending. Talk to you all soon. Thank you very much.